The Western genre has long been a staple of Hollywood, but not all films in this beloved genre went as planned. Some Westerns, despite high expectations, became the downfall of their directors. These films didn't just fail at the box office, they ruined careers and altered the trajectory of Hollywood itself. From cursed productions to creative clashes, these films were more than just commercial disasters. They were career-killing blows for the filmmakers involved. The stories behind these Westerns are as tragic as the narratives they aim to tell, and their impact on the industry remains significant to this day. 1. All the Pretty Horses, 2000. Billy Bob Thornton had earned a reputation as a talented director after his success with Sling Blade. So when he took on the adaptation of Cormac McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses, expectations were high. With a star-studded cast that included Matt Damon and Penelope Cruz, and a $57 million budget, it seemed like the perfect recipe for success. However, the film was a creative disaster. Thornton's initial cut of the film was nearly 4 hours long, but the studio demanded that it be trimmed down to under 2 hours. The final result was a choppy, incoherent film that didn't do justice to McCarthy's beautiful prose. Critics were harsh, and audiences stayed away. The film grossed a mere $18 million, a massive disappointment. Thornton, who had been hoping this film would cement his place as a respected director, found himself disowned by the studio. The film's failure effectively ended his career as a director, even though he continued to act. He publicly disowned the theatrical version, claiming it was a butchered version of his masterpiece. Unfortunately, Hollywood didn't care, and All the Pretty Horses remains a failed opportunity, with Thornton's dreams of directorial greatness dashed in its wake. 2. The Quick and the Dead, 1995. Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead had all the ingredients for a blockbuster. A star-studded cast led by Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman, and Russell Crowe, and a stylish, action-packed premise. Raimi, known for his work on Evil Dead, brought his trademark flair for kinetic action to this Western, filled with rapid zooms and Dutch angles. However, what worked in horror didn't translate well to the Western genre. The film's rapid pace and unusual visual style felt out of place and confused audiences. Despite its $32 million budget, the film earned only $18.5 million at the domestic box office. Critics savaged the film, calling it an empty spectacle. Sharon Stone, who had been riding high after Basic Instinct, saw her star power fade, and Raimi's reputation as a director took a hit. Although he would eventually find success with Spider-Man, The Quick and the Dead served as a painful reminder that even the most creative directors can falter when their style doesn't fit the genre. Raimi's film showed Hollywood that his unique vision had limits, especially in big-budget studio productions, and it would take him years to regain his footing. 3. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, 1973. Sam Peckinpah was known for his gritty, violent films, and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid seemed like a natural extension of his previous work. However, the film's troubled production was fraught with conflict and controversy. 3. Peckinpah, already known for clashing with studios, refused to compromise on his vision, which led to severe tensions on set. When the studio, MGM, hated Peckinpah's version, they took the film away from him and drastically cut it, removing nearly 30 minutes of footage. The final theatrical release was incoherent, and critics tore it apart. Audiences didn't connect with the film, and it bombed at the box office. Peckinpah's career, already on shaky ground, was left in ruins. The director's cut of the film, which was released years later, was hailed as a masterpiece, but by then it was too late for Peckinpah. His reputation as a troublemaker and his clashes with studios had made him unemployable. His career never fully recovered, and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid became a symbol of what could have been had the studio allowed Peckinpah to finish his film his way. The director's version was released posthumously, But by then, the damage was done. 4. The Long Riders, 1980. Walter Hill's The Long Riders was an attempt to create a more nuanced, character-driven Western. The film was unique in that it cast real-life brothers, Kirk, Keith, and Robert Carradine, among others, to portray the infamous James Younger gang. Critics praised the film for its performances and stunning cinematography. However, despite the film's critical acclaim, it failed to connect with audiences. Released in 1980, the film was overshadowed by the massive success of Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, which dominated the box office. Audiences weren't interested in a slower, more thoughtful Western that focused on character development over action. The Long Riders barely broke even, and Hill's reputation as a Western director took a hit. The film failed to secure a place for Hill as the go-to Western filmmaker, and his career suffered as a result. Hill would later struggle to regain his place in the genre, with his 1995 film Wild Bill marking a disastrous second attempt at Western filmmaking. While The Long Riders eventually found its audience on home video, it was too late to reverse the damage it did to Hill's career at the time. 5. Heaven's Gate, 1980. Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate is often cited as one of the biggest disasters in Hollywood history. Cimino, coming off the success of The Deer Hunter, was given complete creative control and an unprecedented $44 million budget to make an epic Western about the Johnson County War. What followed was a production plagued by overblown budgets, long delays, and creative excesses. Cimino shot a 5.5-hour work print that was deemed unfit for release. The studio, United Artists, forced him to cut it down to 219 minutes, but the damage had already been done. The film, released in 1980, was a colossal failure both critically and commercially. It barely made back a fraction of its production cost, and United Artists, unable to recover from the losses, went bankrupt. Heaven's Gate is often credited with killing the new Hollywood movement, as it marked the end of the era of directors having complete creative control. Cimino's career, once on the rise, was effectively destroyed. He would never regain the creative freedom he had once enjoyed, and his future films struggled to find success. Heaven's Gate remains a cautionary tale about unchecked ambition in Hollywood, where one filmmaker's hubris led to the collapse of an entire studio and the death of a movement. 6. Tom Horn, 1980. Tom Horn was supposed to be the big break for director William Wyard. He was brought in to direct a Western starring the legendary Steve McQueen. With the backing of Warner Brothers and a decent budget, this film seemed poised for success. But from the very beginning, the production was plagued with problems. Several directors left, including Don Siegel and Elliot Silverstein, and McQueen, who was struggling with terminal cancer, took over directing duties. However, the Directors Guild shut that down, forcing the studio to hire Weird as a nominal director to comply with union rules, while McQueen and cinematographer John Alonzo actually ran the show. The script was constantly rewritten, and the budget was slashed dramatically. By the time Tom Horn was released, McQueen's health had deteriorated severely, and it was evident in every frame of the film. Critics labeled it slow and lifeless, and the film failed to make a significant impact at the box office. Wyard's career as a feature film director was essentially over before it even began. Hollywood's harsh verdict was that Wyard's name was now attached to a major disaster, and it ensured he would never work in film again. What should have been the start of his career in feature films ended up being a career-killing failure, one that no one remembers today. 7. Wild Bill, 1995. Wild Bill was supposed to be Walter Hill's grand return to Westerns. After making a name for himself with action-packed films like The Warriors and 48 Hours, Hill seemed like the perfect choice to direct a biographical Western about Wild Bill Hickok. The film had a star-studded cast, including Jeff Bridges and Ellen Barkin, but its approach was highly experimental. Hill chose to tell the story through fragmented flashbacks, a non-linear structure that proved alienating to many viewers. Audiences didn't connect with this arty approach to the life of Hickok, and the film's box office numbers reflected that. Despite a $30 million budget, Wild Bill only grossed $2.1 million, making it one of the biggest bombs of 1995. Critics slammed Hill for being pretentious and self-indulgent, a stark contrast to the tough guy action films he was known for. Hill's career took a significant hit, and he wouldn't direct another major feature film for 6 years. When he did return, his projects went straight to video. Wild Bill represented the downfall of a once promising filmmaker, and it left Hill struggling to recover from a financial and creative misstep that destroyed the momentum he had spent 2 decades building. 8. 55 Days at Peking, 1963. Nicholas Ray, the director behind the iconic Rebel Without a Cause, was a major figure in Hollywood, but his career was irreparably damaged by the disastrous production of 55 Days at Peking. This historical epic about the Boxer Rebellion in China was set to be a major film with a grand budget and an all-star cast, including Charlton Heston and Ava Gardner. However, the production was chaotic from the beginning. Shot in Spain to double for China, the film was plagued by a ballooning budget, constant reshoots, and a stressed-out director. Ray, already battling exhaustion, suffered a physical and mental breakdown midway through the shoot, forcing the studio to replace him. By the time the film was completed, it was a shadow of its original vision. Though 55 Days at Peking was decent in terms of plot, it failed to live up to expectations and performed poorly at the box office. Ray's reputation as a director, once secure, took a massive hit. He never fully recovered from the toll that the film took on him, and his career never regained its former prominence. 55 Days at Peking remains a reminder of how one troubled production can break a director's career. 9. The Homesman, 2014. Tommy Lee Jones as the Homesman was a departure from traditional westerns, a bleak, almost nihilistic look at the harsh realities of life on the frontier. Starring Jones himself and Hilary Swank, the film was shot with a slow, deliberate pace and no flashy gunfights or grand moments of redemption. The story, about a woman escorting mentally unwell women across Nebraska, was unconventional, even for a western. Unfortunately, audiences didn't seem ready for such a grim tale. Despite positive critical reception, The Homesman flopped at the box office, grossing only $8 million globally, about half of its $16 million budget. The film's somber tone, lack of traditional Western action, and dark subject matter made it a tough sell to mainstream audiences. As a result, Jones, who had previously built a solid reputation as both an actor and director, found himself marginalized as a filmmaker. Hollywood's response to The Homesman was swift. Jones's future as a director was all but ended. While Jones has continued to act, he has not directed a film since, and it's unlikely that he will ever be given another chance behind the camera. The Homesman remains a tragic, beautifully made Western that couldn't find its audience, and it ultimately put an end to Jones's career as a director. 10. The Ballad of Cable Hogue, 1970. Sam Peckinpah was a director known for his violent, gritty films. But with The Ballad of Cable Hogue, he attempted something completely different, a tender, romantic Western. The story of a prospector who finds water in the desert and builds a way station was a far cry from his usual brutal style. However, Warner Brothers had no idea how to market the film, and audiences expecting the violence of the Wild Bunch were left confused by the film's light-hearted and even humorous tone. Critics were unsure how to take the film, and Cable Hogue made barely half its $3.5 million budget at the box office. Peckinpah's gamble to prove he was more than just a director of violence backfired, and Warner Brothers blacklisted him from working on big-budget studio films for 3 years. The film's failure hurt Peckinpah's reputation, and it took a toll on his future projects. Although Cable Hogue eventually found a cult following, it marked a low point in Peckinpah's career. The film demonstrated that even a talented director like Peckinpah couldn't escape the limits of Hollywood's expectations. For him, it was a harsh lesson. Once a director is typecast, it's hard to break free from that label. Cable Hogue proved that, and Peckinpah's struggle to redefine himself only resulted in more failure and frustration. In the end, these westerns became cautionary tales for directors and studios alike. They show just how fragile careers can be in an industry where a single failure can define you. Whether through creative struggles, production disasters, or critical backlash, these films ruined careers that once had endless potential. While some directors found redemption, many never recovered. Hollywood, always looking forward, often forgets the lessons of the past. Yet, the stories of these films live on as a testament to the highs and lows of filmmaking and the unforgiving nature of the movie business.